All right. Well, good morning. How's everyone doing this morning? Wide awake, right? We'll go ahead and get started. Make sure you get done on time. Get you guys up to the keynote upstairs. For those of you just walking in, if you haven't, the Wi-Fi is on the back of your name tag, and it's the password is the same as what the Wi-Fi access point code is as well. So if you're having a hard time figuring that out, it took me a while to figure that out. But go ahead and feel free to join on there. Feel free to join on to the presentation if you'd like. My name is Andrew, Fenstermaker. I am actually from the Iowa State School District. I teach 5th grade half-time, and I actually, as part of the teacher leadership program, I'm actually, we call it instructional design strategies, technology, and innovation, to avoid using the word coach. But essentially it's just a tech coach, innovation coach. So I have the luxury of still teaching and then working with teachers in the afternoon. Just kind of get started, this is always, I found pretty humorous because I feel like it is pretty common to have a lot of this. And I know that our district specifically, we just had smart boards installed just a couple years ago where everybody has it, and there's still a lot of us that are trying to figure out how to utilize that more efficiently instead of just reading right off of the slides. So, as far as the presentation goes, this is kind of where I got the title from.
He spoke. Get up, son. Let's fight. He was so deadly, in fact, that his enemies would go blind from overexposure to pure awesomeness. He's too awesome! Attractive. How can we repay you? There is no charge for awesomeness or attractiveness.
Notice I left that last part out there for the title.
Swallow.
Don't have enough hair to be attractive anymore, so. So, the way this presentation will kind of work, we'll go through a few different things here. There's going to be times where you guys can chat to neighbors, so if you guys have somebody sitting close to you, you'll have some time to chat to each other. There's going to be some examples of stuff, but it's not really a traditional, like, here's a tool and thing. So it's more of kind of to push back a little bit, to challenge us as teachers of what can we do differently for our students. So a little bit about me, you kind of saw some of the slides. I think this was really loud. It's pretty loud back there. You guys can?
It's great.
Okay, all right, perfect. So I went to Iowa. All right, we have one Iowa. Okay, all right. I went to Graceland. I got my master's in tech integration. But the funny part about going to Graceland, so when I got this, I didn't think it was that long ago. It was still when MySpace was like the hit thing, as well as flip phones. And I'm not putting that up there to highlight anybody that still has a flip phone. My mom still has one, and she's still rocking it. But like that was like how fast things change. I mean, it blows my mind how quick things change for not only us as teachers, but as students as well. Like the things that they have access to, it really allows them to do quite a few different things. So I have this graph up here, and maybe you kind of look through and you maybe cheated and saw what this actually represents. But if you haven't, maybe turn to somebody and take a guess of what you think that graph represents.
I know, how did I know that?
So what do you guys think? As much as I wish that would represent my weight loss as an Asian adult, not one so the other way. What do you guys think? What does that represent? Student engagement? Okay. Did you look ahead? Yeah, so this is actually a poll done of students about the engagement. So my big complaint about this is that as kids get older, then they obviously are losing their engagement. Well, I taught first grade for 6 years, so I used to think that, oh, it was the older kids, teachers that kind of ruined it for everyone, but now I teach 5th grade, so I'm part of potentially the problem. So, as you see, students are becoming less engaged. And then another connection with this too is Sir Ken Robinson did some research about divergent thinking, which is essentially not creativity, but more the capacity to be creative. And so you can see kind of as, again, as kids get older, we're again losing engagement as well as we're losing that creative capacity. And here's some examples. So this was this year, not that long ago, I was having them do just a quick formative assessment that I wanted them to find out. So you can see, I thought this was pretty self-explanatory, and I had a student come up to me and go, so where it says your name, is that, like, am I supposed to put my, this student was asking, do I put my name there? And looked at him and I said, what do you mean? Like, well, yeah, but I put my name here. What do you think could potentially go there? Like, he had no idea that, yeah, all I'm asking for you is put your name there. So it blew my mind that that was not something that he made a connection with. And this isn't the only example. So this one was something that I did last year where they had to find some vocab words in a reading book. Usually there was a number 2 there. And so I had a student come up to me and go, what do you want me to do with vocab? Because there's no number 2. So, well, that enter key, if you press it, it'll actually make a number 2. So it was, and it wasn't, I would get if it was like the first time that we used computers, but this was like mid-year, towards the end of the year. So it's just that it made me think a little different, like, why are these kids struggling so much to problem solve independently? So here's another example. So they had to cut these cards out. So that's what they looked like, and of course our copy machine was out of toner when I ran them, so this is kind of what it looked like. However, I had shown them that before and said, all right, so you're gonna cut these out, and then we got an activity that you're gonna use them to match up with some things. And yet again, I had a student come up and say, hey, how am I supposed to cut these out? Well, scissors would be a good starting point, but, so like, it's just that, it's interesting to me how many of those students, time and time again, the stuff that they're asking is it because that I'm as a teacher spoon feeding them so much, or am I not giving them the opportunity to kind of really think critically about things and have to find problems on their own? So hopefully some of this stuff in this presentation kind of highlights some of the stuff that I'm attempting to do, as well as kind of challenges you guys to kind of see things, what's best for the students. So, in your opinion, if you want, I think the internet's working pretty good. There's a link, if you guys click on that Padlet. I just wanted to get some of your guys' ideas. In your opinion, why do you think kids lose engagement and creativity as they get older? And don't feel like you have to put your name on there. You can just add in some different thoughts. So as you guys are kind of scrolling through some of these, is there any of these that have a lot in common in your mind? What are some of the things that stand out that are common between all of them? Okay, so not allowing them to think for themselves. Which maybe it gets back to kind of those kids that came up and said, well, how do I cut these out, or like whose name do I put in here, or how do I get a number 2?
Home issues.
Home issues, yeah.
More going on, like they're involved in their activities.
Yeah, so true. So many kids that love teams for sports, after school, extracurricular stuff.
They're not really tapping into the way that they learn.
Yeah, yeah. Kids are different, yeah.
The school is boring. But I think that comes from everything else that's going on around them, and now they have to come and they have to sit and focus and think, and that's boring.
Yeah.
The other one that comes up repeatedly is the fact of fear of having the wrong answer, because we're so tuned to having everything correct that we're not allowing them to the safety of being wrong.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot to that safety of being wrong. I see a lot of kids who are literally afraid they're going to be in trouble if it's not exactly the way a teacher wants it, which means somewhere along the line somebody's told them, you have to do it my way.
Yeah. It's always interesting, this of too much time on access, which not have a balance. Like our district just had an ed camp this past Friday, and that was one of the big conversations that came up about. We had a rocks versus sucks session about one-to-one and what people thought. Is it a great thing or is it a bad thing? And that was, regardless of what side they're on, that was a big thing that stood out. Is they're like, there has to be a balance. Like kids have to have a balance with access. So these are all great. I mean, I love hearing what other people think about this because it gets things turned in my head too of, no, I didn't really think about that. Or there's a lot of common things that people, the little world that I live in, are experiencing the same kind of things as students. So thanks for sharing some of those ideas. So modern learners, which kind of hits on a lot of the stuff that you kind of saw there. So I had the opportunity to read George's book this summer, and so I was kind of flipping through some of the things that I highlighted, and I have 3 that kind of stood out to me that I think kind of reflected of what the gist of this presentation will kind of share a little bit about. So I think this one hits the nail on the head about compliance. Like we're in a culture right now of compliance, versus kids having that opportunity to be creative and express themselves. And maybe that's why school is born, or maybe that's why we're not appealing to their learning styles, because we're more excited about compliance than we are about allowing them and empowering them to be utilizing the resources that they want or what they're into, and then also making over memorizing. I mean, I teach social studies to all the 5th grade classes, and I have a hard time. I'm back and forth on the content that I'm teaching them, because so much of it is, are they really going to be a failure in life if they don't know an exact date or an exact, Native American tribe that lived in a certain section of the United States, or if they didn't know where the Mississippi River was. So I struggle. It's a constant battle of challenging me to how can I redesign this so that it actually appeals to them and engages them. Then this, I think, too, hits on that. Like, we have to know how to think, and kids need to know how to adapt. So getting back to that fear of failure, it seems like we're front-loading them so much with, here's what you have to do, and never necessarily evaluating the process that they use to get to the end product, but more just, here's your one chance to show me what you know, and if you don't, you're all sorry. And then lastly, just goes back to doesn't care how you learn it, which is, I think, is so true. I mean, it's the conversations I've had with teachers about wanting to make sure that my 5th grade class is going through the curriculum the same as another 5th grade class, when the end goal is not the content and how I teach it, but more, it doesn't matter as long as the kids know whatever that standard is. Like, why does it matter? Like, why shouldn't it give them the opportunity to I mean, it's like saying that all of them are the same. It shouldn't be about a standardized instructional approach to those kids. It should be that we're all professionals and have the chance to actually engage those kids the best that we know how to do according to what they need at that moment. This is something I found interesting. So, do you think teachers should take up cell phones during class, yes or no? So, you can see there's a little box in the front, kids can turn cell phones in. I don't teach secondary, so I can understand it might be a little bit more challenging. I still have fifth graders. When I ask my fifth graders to raise their hand if they have a cell phone, I think I have all like two. But if you ask them if they have like a tablet or something else at home, all the kids in my class have some kind of a personal device. The best part about this, it was sent by my wife to me at the beginning of the school year, saying, hey, you should do this. Which led to a great conversation about, really, honey, do you know what I do at school? So I thought this was, and it's just that perception, that mindset of, I mean, it depends on what the kids are doing, but there's more power in that little device than what we can imagine, and the access that it gives them. Again, there needs to be some balance, but it's just a different mindset, and it's hard to break that mindset when we've been raised that way and we've been taught that way, and now all of a sudden that's the norm. Especially me growing up as a kid, didn't have cell phones, so like this is hard for me to fathom. And why would kids need them out? So parents that were in that time frame of no cell phones, this seems normal. Yeah. So they have an experience of what you can actually do with it. And this is another example of why access is changing the ways that we can teach.
Alexa, what is +4 + 5 + 4? +4 + 5 + 4 is equal to 13.
So, my wife, even though she sent me a message, actually bought the little Alexa thing from Amazon. And so that was my son's first time attempting at it. We're trying to tell him, hey, just say some random numbers. And so you can see his excitement. Like, now you have an on-demand resource. Anytime you want to know something, go ask, which is translated into, hey, Alexa, play Uptown Funk, which is the only thing that seems to, or maybe this is inappropriate, but you can ask Alexa to play a fart, which she thinks is the coolest thing in the world, to listen to Alexa make a farting sound. So, I had the privilege of going and watching and attending a session from Will Richardson. And so I reached out to him not that long ago and asked, like, well, I really enjoyed some of your slides that you used. Do you care if I use those to share? He said, absolutely, go for it. So this is coming from him and just some of his thoughts on how we're educating students, and specifically the modern learner. So one of the things he said is that if you think about a long time ago when we decided what teachers were supposed to be teaching students in regards to what do they need out of all the information that's out there, what information do they specifically need to be successful in their life. So if this library represents all the information out there in the entire world, this is our best guess as to what little nugget of information that we're actually trying to force feed them and say this is what the absolute knowledge is to be a success. This is all of the access that kids have outside of the classroom as far as experts, whether it's on YouTube or if they are finding social media outlets to connect with experts. So these are the experts that they have outside of school, but yet this is kind of what we're giving them inside of school to say their teacher's kind of the end goal of here's your resource. And then all the apps and resources that they have access to outside of school, and then what they have inside of school. So this is, I think, again, a great reflection of what it means to be teaching these kids in this current time. So they have access to Khan Academy, which claims to say is a free world-class education for anyone. So what if it is? Like, what does that mean as teachers that we have to be mindful of if they have at their fingertips world-class education? Not saying that it is to go to Khan Academy that's world-class, but what if it is? They can go to Linda and actually, anything you want to learn, get a subscription and you can have tutorial courses right there. If I want to learn about photography, I don't have to go take a class at college anymore. I want to learn a new language, I don't have to go take a class anymore. It's at my fingertips on demand when I want it. If I want to learn how to code, there's an app for teaching algebra to 5-year-olds. Can you imagine what high school would be like if those kids knew how to start doing algebra as a kindergartner? So again, it's just the mindset of, traditionally we said there's a time and a place you have to learn, and it's in my classroom. But it doesn't have to be. And so here's what we're doing at schools. We're trying all these different learnings, more learnings. So whatever it is, and I'm not saying that any of these are better than the other, because when you look at it, it gets down to, at the core, it's actually all about learning. And so this is kind of what Will left us with when we attended this session, that I'd never heard of this gentleman, but as I read through the quote, it, again, made me really think, like, it makes a lot of sense. If I'm willing to learn and have the capacity to want to continue to grow, like we always encourage our students to be lifelong learners, they have the ability to do amazing things. But if we're not, we're going to be stuck in a world that no longer exists. So what do you think prevents students and teachers from having that growth mindset? So let's take about 30 seconds to just reflect on some of the stuff we talked about and see what your neighbors might think about. Why do you think teachers and students maybe have some kind of roadblock to that growth mindset?
I'm learning.
Because I used to more at like 20,000. Taking the whole year on the
There's a different group of kids.
There's a different group of kids, and that's fine to be more performing.
So what do you guys think? What are some of the, and maybe some of the stuff that we put on that pad a little bit earlier about maybe what some of those roadblocks are, and maybe it's not an actual roadblock, maybe it's just a perception. Maybe there is no roadblock that's actually preventing teachers to have that growth mindset, but what are some of the things that maybe you guys thought of or talked about? Yeah.
Well, we read the mindset book as our summer read as a staff. And one of the reflections we had was some of the people who claim to be the most growth mindset in kids cannot get over the need for a prerequisite to get into their class. So I think it's that struggle between that content and skills that goes into that, because they only want juniors in their class because of maturity. That doesn't mean that they can't get the, so I think sometimes it's classroom management in that too. It's like a younger kid is a different way to teach.
Yeah, in which our traditional education system has always put kids by age, which doesn't really need to be. I mean, could it be that a 6-year-old could work with an 8-year-old or a 9-year-old? Does it have to be?
Or why do you have to learn about voting when you're a senior, because then you're 18?
Right. What's that next door? I have to text Nick and tell him quiet now.
Well, another thing comes back to fear. We seem to be programmed to always have the right answer or else hold back.
The other thing is, for both students and teachers, we need think time. You can't grow if you don't have time to give your brain the opportunity to grow.
Yeah.
So we may say, I know I need to learn about technology, but if the district say, you can't go to this iTech because we need you in the classroom or we don't have the money, you're not going to have the opportunity to integrate technology into your classroom.
Yeah.
We talked about how in both aspects they're maybe scared, like it's it's inconsistent. So one kid might be in one teacher's room and then they go to the next teacher's room and it's not the same. So it makes it hard to have that growth mindset all the time. And then teachers are nervous about doing it. So it's not necessarily that they don't want to, it's that they're scared of what might happen if they don't get through the content or the both aspects.
I think sometimes educators or maybe admin want to control the information, so we don't allow the kids to expand because, God forbid they know something more than we do, or they learn something, because the kids are really good at this stuff. And so I think sometimes that is a fear factor in maybe some of the teachers.
Yeah. So it sounds like initiative fatigue, the amount of things that are put on our plates as teachers, and having that time to reflect and have those quality conversations is just, where's that value in the grand scheme of things? And it doesn't seem to be a high priority in a lot of those situations. And even just the expectation that the teacher is the expert in the classroom, which that is a tough mindset to shift and realize, wow, I'm not the expert on this kid knows. We're being okay with that. That's a huge thing. And even why we try to avoid like tech coach, that coach word, that it's not that you're bad at anything, it's just let's have a conversation. But how do we get that? So thanks again for sharing, that was great stuff. So here's what I've attempted to do. So in the description of this, I was going to discuss some of the 4 C's and my attempt to do things maybe what I thought was beneficial to the students. And I'm not saying this is 100% the right way to do things. This is my successes and failures along this path of how can I redesign my instruction in my classroom to maybe make an impact with some of these kids that maybe wouldn't have made an impact before. So as far as creativity goes, I just finished a project with my students. So we were researching Native Americans. And the big end goal is that they made the connection of that Native Americans adapted to their region. And their shelters, their food, their clothing were a direct reflection of where they're at. So again, I'm not a big fan of social studies, so I have to find a way. If I'm not excited about it, they're not going to be excited about it. So I had to find a way, and this was my attempt. There were some successes. The kids had to problem solve of how to do this. So these are make-dos, and what they are is they're these little plastic screws, and they come with plastic saws, so you can cut up cardboard, and then you can screw it together in a safe way to where you don't have issues with knives and all those things. So it makes it a way to get those kids to go through, and when we did this, go through the engineering design process. So they had a problem, they had to go through that engineering design process where they had to create a plan. So they were required to sketch out a diagram. That was their blueprint before they did this. There were some good things, and there was also some failures, miserable failures with this. From the standpoint of when the kids had a chance to collaborate with each other, it was miserable. I mean, there was kids not helping at all. There was kids that were arguing, so-and-so's not helping, so-and-so's just playing with cardboard, which, in my mind, how many times are they actually given the opportunity to get no instruction? Here's cardboard, build a shelter, go. Figure it out. So again, what do you mean? What was it supposed to be? So I said it can't be taller than a desk and it has to fit on a poster board. And that was their only instruction. So, I mean, there was failures, but I think, again, that was a big pushback on them of, you have to figure out how to be successful in life, working with people that you enjoy and people that you might hate. But you have to figure out how to do it. So again, it was successful and maybe unsuccessful. Here's an example of them cutting, which I find comical too. So I might have suggested maybe attempting to draw what they're cutting out. They're cutting out a U to be the front of the shelter in the middle of the cardboard, which I maybe would have went to the edge, so I'm not cutting right. But that was the way they did it. So again, it was just, I'm not going to tell you how to do it. You guys can try to problem solve. And so they did. They kind of figured out a better solution to the problem. But again, just another example of how can I attempt to allow them to kind of do some of their creative things. So, I know that they're doing Goose Chase. Has anybody heard of Goose Chase at all? So Goose Chase is an app that allows you to create challenges. So I have some challenges, and I wanted to attempt to try to do it with vocab. So my students, we have vocab again this week, all right, yay. So how can I do things differently so that their vocab instruction gets to be a little bit more exciting for them? So you create missions, essentially, and you can award different points on it. So I had 5 groups. So each group had a device, so an iPad, and they were able to join the game and they were able to see all these challenges. So it didn't say you had to do number 1 or number 10, or it didn't matter which order they went in. So they got to tell me they had to strike a pose or record a video that explained each word. So based on which one they chose, their group had to decide who was going to videotape, to choreograph it, and then they had to record it and upload it. So it actually worked pretty slick. So here's one student's attempt at it.
How's your day today? Oh, it was good. And then I hesitated to say something. Where is my dog? I'm focused. I'm trying to find my dog.
So hesitated was the first one, scanned was the second one. So it was entirely up to them. I said, as long as it's appropriate for school, I don't care what you guys do to, in your mind, reflect what you feel this word actually means. So actually having them physically get together as a group and talk about what it might mean versus matching a word to the definition on a piece of paper, my guess is that they're probably going to remember this potentially a little bit more than they would just matching a word to the definition. So Goose Chase, it was a fun resource. You can have 5 groups, but if you do email them as an educator, you can have your game be accessible so that you can have more than 5 groups. So that if you go and look, it's like $100 for a license if you want to do whatever you want. But as a teacher, I said, I'm not paying $100. I can't afford it. And I emailed them, and they sent an email back that says, yeah, just send us an email with the game title, and we'll go ahead and make it so that it's accessible for more than 5 people in your class.
So did they just have iPads then?
Yep.
They were?
Yep, so this had an iPad. I created the game. They went onto the Goose Chase app and able to search my game, and then once they found the game, they were able to join it. And so you can password protect the game so that only certain people with password can get into it.
And then in the game, it told them the vocab word.
Yeah, so in the game, they saw this. This is the screen. So I took a screenshot of the actual game, what they would have saw. So they see all these challenges, so they just click on which one they want to do, and then it gives them the option to upload a video or take a video in real time.
And then do they see each other's videos?
They don't see each other's. It ends up going to an activity feed. So what I put up there is, there's a leaderboard that I put up and displayed the entire time so they could see, which was hilarious because they saw me go hit refresh once, and so I had some kids go into another classroom across the hall. It wasn't being used because it got really loud. And every time I came back in, somebody was up at the board hitting the refresh button. So I want to see who's winning. So it was a fun activity. I haven't done it again, but I planned it at some point. But it was an experiment that I thought, the kids actually seem to be a little bit excited about this. So here's another attempt. Poetry. I taught all the writing last year. I'm not a poet, nor am I a big fan. The kids were, the first day we tried the traditional, hey, here's some examples of different types of poetry. And it was boring stuff if we go back to that tablet. So Soundtrap, it lets you record audio. And so I was talking with another teacher and telling him the situation of, yeah, we're teaching poetry and it's not going to be a good deal. And he suggested, why don't you do parodies? Okay, yeah, I'm trying to get them to understand patterns and that words can have different messages. Let's try it. So Soundtrack lets you, again, this is kind of where you're able to, kind of the user dashboard, but so you can add in music, you can create your own loops and whatnot. We're just using it from the standpoint of, I wanted kids to create lyrics and then actually record it. So with that, here's kind of an example of one student that did Rihanna's song. So I had them go through and identify how many sounds they heard per line, and then theirs that they created had to reflect it. So yeah, I call them fatty, that's not right. So here's an example. I'll leave that up. So this is a student that I had that was able to record. Let me get it. even told me that she kind of was semi-depressed throughout the school year. And so I would have never have known about the students. So I put, here's more of what is more realistic. This is what I mostly got. So, they were all little jewels of next voice, but, and so the powerful thing, this is an email, and, I won't read through the whole thing, hence my first slide. I don't think I should call it teaching to go through, but, so I guess it's a parent's email from her to me about things. So what's interesting is this parent actually had a chance. I worked with Alicia and I played the song to Alicia and she's like, wow, she's got a good range. I would love to work with her. She does voice lessons. So we matched them up and it's actually been a really good match, those two together. And so she actually had a recital yesterday that I went to, but I couldn't go in the room. Like I had to sit outside. The cool thing though is that like her grandparents were all in town this weekend, but she wouldn't let her parents go. But I got to go. So I thought that was pretty cool, like those connections that you make that mean so much to students that you don't actually think of. So here's what I'm gonna ask if you would, and we'll keep kind of moving on. If you want, so this Padlet is actually, she has no idea that I actually shared it. But if you would leave a comment for her, that'd be awesome, because I plan to show it to her and just help build that confidence with her. So if you would, that'd be great. Don't feel obligated to. I just trying to build her confidence still a little bit more so that maybe I get to sit in the classroom to listen to her instead of outside. So we'll keep moving along so that we can make sure to get through a lot of stuff. This is another example of a student. So they had to give a how-to speech. And he gave a how-to speech of doing like Sims, the SimCity. So this was, and I just took screenshots of it because I thought it was rather interesting. So this is kind of the start of it. And he went through step by step and explained, like that's his end product. So all the little pieces that he had to use to combine and put these things together, so like that was, again, part of what he ended up with. So I bring this up because I thought it was really interesting. He's really passionate about that, so like how can I find ways for him to design like this? Maybe it's, hey, you tell me a story about using this, or hey, you build this so that we can make some math problems. We'll annotate over it. You give us some dimensions of that patio and we'll figure out the area. Like how can I find ways to integrate what he's wanting to do and very passionate about and challenge other kids then to apply their understanding to what he's very passionate about. So how can I harness his skill set instead of me being the expert on things? How can we do that? Chariot Challenge is something that we did. We took, and there's a video there, I'll motor through some of this stuff so we can get done. So we actually took Spiros and they had to design a chariot. So it was at the end of the year, again, teaching social studies, we were talking kind of about ancient times of them using chariots and what they used it for, but they had to research it and then they had to design a chariot that they attached to a Sphero. So I'll show you this quick, but. So here's all their chariots. They had an actual marshmallow as their charioteer. And so they had the chance to then race these around the classroom. So these are some examples of them racing them around the classroom after they designed it. So they, oh yes, love that. So they got to race them around the classroom. But again, they were learning so much even though they didn't realize it. Because they had to research stuff that they could apply to building a chariot, but they would have never done that independently if I hadn't made it so that, hey, we're actually going to race this at the end. So let's start building. So collaboration, here's a project that we did. So we used Google Classroom. So you can see there's almost a little over 200 students in this classroom. So we partnered with 3 other elementaries in the same district, and then, so there's 3 other 5th grade, including my 3 5th grade, and then 2 6th grade classes across the district. So they had to create a 6-word story. And so the power behind that is they had a chance to go and reflect on each other's creations. So the student made the connection that those words were written the way that they were because of the shapes of clouds, and maybe the words are white because of the light clouds. But I think the even more powerful piece of this, so here's some examples of them, of what they came up with. So this one, then everybody got to leave comments on things of how word choice, how font choice, how word placement impacts the meaning of your story. And so this one was just an example of somebody leaving a comment of how those different fonts and different colors really match what the phrase is. This was a collaborative project that we did. So we actually took a Google map and we had them research a landmark in the United States. And so we took it and put it on an actual Google map. So they had each of these that they created, then they actually created a video, but they also created a thing link that actually would show about their landmark. So with this, it was, again, they had to work together as a class to build all these maps and all these locations. But again, it was leveraging something that they had to do kind of some research on landmarks, but how could I make this so that they're more aware of where these were actually located? So we just did a Google map, and all the place markers were them adding their own locations to these maps. Same thing can go for, so 2nd grade group at Garner Elementary in North Liberty. They actually had 2nd graders doing it. So they did a research project, so they had all the students got the chance to research information and put it on a map as well. Last year we used a website, and I just had a debate about how you say it the other day. Somebody said it's News ELA, or News ELA, or Newsella. Don't know what the correct answer is, but so they had students were reading this piece, and so I thought, well, why not have a challenge to see if they can build one? So they went through this design thinking process. They had to sketch things out. And so this is what they actually were able to create. So they had to create a prosthetic hand that could lift up a cup. And so these are some of their designs, and this is an actual final go at picking up the cup. So I know it wasn't necessarily like part of the curriculum that said, hey, you have to build prosthetic hands, but to challenge them to work together and actually design a prototype and then construct it really forced them to apply some thinking skills that they didn't necessarily have. So we did historical figure research, and so those are some of the tools that we used. Here's an example of a student that got the opportunity to use Scratch, and they created this project. So this was their historical figure research that they did. I mean, there's no, so this girl had to program all of these to actually happen. And the great thing about this is we did this project as an option, and I had a student that was never really engaged with anything. So when you gave this option to him to be able to, whatever the project was to demonstrate learning, go ahead and code it. It was the first one done. So it's just, okay, how can I apply stuff that we're doing and give them the choice? Instead of saying it's a one-size-fits-all, and the only way you can show me your understanding is, here's this end-of-unit test you have to take. So it really opened up the door. So just for the sake of time, we did a project to raise some money for a robotics club. So if you have a chance, there's a video in here that this was all created by students. A group of girls that I actually brought to the Iowa 1-1 conference a couple years ago went to a sketchnoting session on how to sketchnote. The great thing behind this is that they actually created this video to share with their class, which then I shared back to the presenter, which then she shared out and somehow got Kathy Schrock's attention. And then she shared it out, and I showed the girls, like, you see how many people that you just got shared to in the world? Like, nothing I've ever done has even came remotely close to getting picked up by anybody with that following. So it's just showing them the fact that the stuff you guys are doing, you can make a huge difference. So student feedback, I encourage you to take it. This is what one of my students said, which I'm assuming means stop talking so much. So stop calling me when I'm not looking, I'm still listening. So I think the common theme, stop talking so much. So what should I start doing? Giving us time to stretch, or maybe give us more time to bring cake class, out of our classes. So we'll wrap things up there. There's still some of the critical thinking piece, but I want to make sure you guys get upstairs. The big goal behind this was just to get you guys to challenge yourselves a little bit with your thinking. There's one last thing all the way at the end if you go to the very end of this. There is a Padlet of, I'd be interested to know kind of what are one thing or what is one thing that you might be thinking about trying differently with your students. Now that you've had a chance to talk to everyone about student engagement and creativity, what would be something that you'd be interested in pushing yourself to do? So there's some other stuff in there, feel free to check it out, but for the sake of getting up to see the keynote, we can get out of here. So, thank you.